The original plan was to speak about the joy of BaOmer this year. That is not going to be possible. Unfortunately, a terrible tragedy in Eretz Yisrael. I only found out about it this evening. So many people were killed, so many people injured. In Shul tonight, we said Tehillim, of course, and every Jew tonight should take out a siddur and say a chapter of Tehillim. We recited Achenu Kol Beit Yisrael. I was originally going to speak tonight in Shul about the fact that tonight and tomorrow is the yurtzeit of the Ramah, Rabbi Moshe Isserlis, who exuded great heroism as a rabbi, in as much as he had spent a lot of time writing a codification of halacha for communities in Ashkenaz. And he found out that a fellow Jew, Rabbi Yosef Karo in Tzfat, was in the process of writing a similar codex. And usually when we speak about Jewish unity, it's against the backdrop of tragedy. And I was going to say, on the yurtzeit of the Ramah, it's a perfect example of a Jew who was willing to actually sacrifice part of his life's work. He had already written a commentary on the Torah called the Darchei Moshe, as Rabbi Yosef Karo had written his Beit Yosef. And Rabbi Moshe Isserlis was willing to forego having a separate book, but rather would make his no more than a critical gloss on the work of Rabbi Yosef Karo. And whereas Rabbi Yosef Karo's magisterial work was called the Shulchan Aruch, the set or arrayed table, the Ramah contented himself with calling his commentary the Mapah, the tablecloth. What a great show of Avat Yisrael. That was the original plan. But now in the wake of such terrible tragedy, I'll share with you some thoughts that I shared tonight in Shul, and it has to do with Rabbi Shimon, particularly on the day of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the day of the Hilula de Rashbi, when so many people converge on Har Meron. I think there should not be any Jews in the world tonight and tomorrow who don't consider this terrible tragedy to be a wake-up call for a cheshbon hanefesh. I certainly cannot claim any powers of prophecy, not making claims that I understand why such a thing happened, but our tradition does teach us that when these things happen, and I must say that the symmetry of the night of and the place of and the time period of, for me, is too much to just let it slip on by. This is supposed to be the night when the dying stopped. The deaths tonight were not from a plague. They were from some terrible calamity transpiring on Har Meron, the mountain associated with the Rashbi, where the Tziyun of the Rashbi is located. And there'll be an inquest, there'll be an investigation, people trying to figure out why this happened, how it came to be, how to prevent it in the future. Of course. But no Jewish heart should be left within a state of equanimity or impassivity at so many losses of fellow Jews and under such circumstances. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, we know, was a student of Rabbi Akiva. And there are many stories about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. One of the most famous ones is found, of all things, on page Lamed Gimel, page 33 of Masachet Shabbat. It's a story of Rabbi Shimon and two colleagues sitting together and having conversation about their assessment of the Roman Empire that at that time, of course, was ascendant. And they were talking and discussing, and they had a discourse between them. Patach Rabbi Yehuda v'Amar, Kama na'im ma'asein shel umazu, how wonderful are the actions of this nation. Tiknu shvakim, tiknu gisharim, tiknu merchatzaot. Look how they at least created beautiful infrastructure here, marketplaces, bridges, bathhouses. Rabbi Yossi shatak, he said nothing. Nana Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai v'Amar, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai weighed in and invade against the evil empire. And he let fly. He was a man of truth, a man of great passion, and a man of very high standards. And he explained, they did it all for their personal gain and aggrandizement. Tiknu shvakim, zonot. They made the marketplaces in order to create red light districts out of them. They created the bathhouses in order to pamper themselves and to indulge themselves. The bridges are to exact tolls from us. And so it was that one of the people who was there, who was listening, Yehuda ben Gerim, Siper Divrehem, he told what they had said to others, presumably. Eventually, the word trickled through of Nishmu Malchut. The kingdom heard, meaning the Roman Empire heard. Amru Yehuda She'ilah Yit'aleh. Yehuda spoke nicely about us. We'll give him a high exalted position, a vaunted position of some sort. Yossi Sheshatak Yigal Tzipori. We will exile him to the town of Tzipori. Shimon Shegina, but the pejorative words of Shimon, Yehareg, will have him killed. Azalhu Berei Tashube Midrasha Kol Yoma Havumaite Lahu Debitu Rifta Avakuza Demaya. Every day they were back in the base medrash immediately. They're sitting and learning, father and son, Rabbi Shimon and his son Rabbi Lazar, and his wife was bringing him. Rabbi Shimon's wife was bringing him some bread and some water every day. But Kitakiv Gzerta, when the decree was intensified, they realized they were going to be found out. Rabbi Shimon said to his son, "Let's go hide, and let's not tell your mother where we're going. When concerned, she'll be tortured and she'll divulge where we are." Therefore, they ran away to a cave. Itrachesh Nisa, there was a miracle there. Ibrilahu Charuva, Ve'ena Damaya. There, a carob tree was found inside the cave and a spring of water. They would take off their clothing to preserve their clothing and bury themselves up to their necks. Bechala in the sand all day long. Kuliyama Garsi, they were learning all day long. Be'idin Suluye, when they had to daven, therefore they had to stand up. So Lavshu, Michsu, Umitzlu, they got dressed and they covered themselves. They stood up, they davened, and then they went back to go to the same thing again. They didn't want their clothing to wear out. Itfu Tresar Shani. 12 years they spent sequestered and in the dark, B'ma'arta, in that cave, according to the mystical tradition, not listed here in the Torah Hanigla that we find in the Gemara. This was the time period of the Gilui Eliyahu, where they received the revelation regarding the Zohar HaKadosh. And I'll just point out, even if you don't see it in the Gemara here, you can see elsewhere in Shas, we know that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was one of the remaining 5 main students of Rabbi Akiva. And Rabbi Akiva certainly had a mystical tradition. It's black on white in the Gemara and Chagiga. There's Arba Shenichnasu Lapares, 4 who entered an orchard. Of those 4, only 1 emerged unscathed. That was Rabbi Akiva. And he passed along this tradition, no doubt, to his students, and among them, the Rashbi. Anyway, Ata Eliyahu, after the 12 years, then Eliyahu came, according to the Gemara, V'kama pitcha de ma'arta, and he stood at the gateway, the entranceway of the cave, and he declared, Amar man lude lebar Yochai demit Kesar ubatil gzarte. Let him leave. Someone should tell Bar Yochai that the Caesar has died, his decree has been nullified, and you can go outside. And of course, when Reb Shimon and his son Reb Elazar go outside, chazu inshe de karkarve vizare. They found people who were engaged basically in agricultural work, and right away, the one said to the other, Amar, menichin chay olav oskim b'chay esha. These people have abandoned their everlasting life, the pursuit of everlasting life, of the study of Torah. Where's their spirituality? They spend their day earning their keep, and they're doing agricultural work, the day's work, the chay esha, that which is transient. Kol makom shenot mineinehem yad nisraf. Everywhere that they looked, they burned up, they incinerated with their eyes. If you're more mystically inclined, you can take that literally. I understand it much more figuratively. They had such a negative view of others, had such a high standard that they held themselves to and held others to, that wherever they looked, there came a destruction. Yatz the Batkol, a heavenly echo, came before them. They heard it. V'Amar said to them, L'hachriv olami yitzatem. You came to destroy my world. Chizul mar'atchem. Go back into your cave. So Hadar Azul Itvu Tresa Yarche Shata. They went back in for 12 months, an entire year, and they figured out. They said, Mishpat Rishon B'Gehenim Yud Bet Chodesh. It's 12 months of punishment for a soul that's being judged for 12 months. That's how long we're in the cave. So Yatz the Batkol v'Amrat Miratchem. Then the heavenly voice told them that they could emerge from the cave. Nafku, they came back out. And the father learned the lesson, but the son did not. Rabbi Elazar. Everywhere Rabbi Elazar made a wound, meaning that he, again, was trying to look at everything with basically a sense of condescension. His father would repair it, would heal it. Rabbi Shimon Amarlo, Beni. Finally, Amarlo, he said to him, Rabbi Shimon said to his son, Beni, my son, Dailo olam ani v'ata. It's enough if just the two of us hold to such a high standard for ourselves and not everyone else to our standard. and a very endearing end story, at least to this part of the story. Bahade Pani Damali Shabta. So it wasn't an Erev Shabbos, maybe an Erev Shabbos just like this one. Chazu Hahusaba de Havanakit Tre Mida'ane Asa. They saw an old Jew who was carrying two myrtle branches, two hadassim. And when they saw this fellow, the right Ben Ashmashli was rushing home because it was already getting dark outside. Amrule, they said to him, Hane Lamalach, why do you have these two branches? Amarlu lichvod Shabbat, for the honor of Shabbat. V'tiskelach bechad. They said to him, well, why don't you just take one? If you're trying to bring some kind of an aromatic atmosphere into your home in honor of Shabbat, why not just use one? And he answered, Chad keneged zachor, v'chad keneged shamor. I take two because these symbolize to me the two elements of Shabbos, of recalling Shabbos in terms of the positive mitzvahs and safeguarding the Shabbos through its observance. Amarle lebrei, said Rabbi Shimon to his son Rabbi Lazar, Chazi kama chavivin mitzvah al Yisrael. Don't you see how precious the mitzvahs are to the Jewish people? Yativ da'atayhu. And Rabbi Lazar was appeased. This end of the story, to me, is the story of Talmidei Rabbi Akiva, who no doubt heard him repeat again and again, V'havta l'recha kamocha, ze klal gadol b'Torah, as the Yerushalmi quotes it. It's quoted elsewhere as well. And after all of those years of learning, they still needed 12 years in a cave, and then another year in a cave. And then when they finally saw the folk traditions of a Jew, after all, there isn't actually a makor that you need to have two hadassim to remind yourself of Zachor and Shomer. But this Jew internalized the message and wanted to do something subtle that maybe wasn't on the books, but it was the tradition that this person took on. Not keneged the halacha, but an enhancement of the halacha, taking the aromatic component and bringing it into an element of a remembrance and a recollection of different aspects of Shabbos. Perhaps the events of this terrible and sad night of Lag BaOmer, marred by this terrible tragedy in Meron, is a wake-up call for each and every Jew. How are we doing with our Avat Yisrael? How do we seem to other Jews? We hold ourselves to a certain standard. Do we actually feel that other Jews are finding their way and their place? Do we look askance at other Jews because they dress differently? Did we not figure out yet that, in fact, this was the whole message of the Sfirat HaOmer? Perhaps there is a very sad wake-up call in the events that transpired tonight in Medinat Yisrael. Fellow precious Jews who lost their lives or were injured. We send our condolences, of course, to the families, and we daven for a refuah shlema for those who are injured. But that should happen on the mountain of Rashbi is doubly troubling, not only because of the time, but of course the place. As the Hasidim like to say about all the tzaddikim, zechuto yagen aleinu. The merit of the Rashbi, who learned the lesson of Avat Yisrael, that merit should protect us. And we should hopefully be able to carry forward some way of perhaps making a bit of a tikkun, of a correction, at a sad time like this, even though we'd like to be happy for Lag BaOmer Pasku Milamut, but unfortunately that time has not come this year. Bila hamavet lanetzach, umacha Hashem Elokim dima me'al kol panim, v'cherpat amo yasir me'al kol haaretz, ki Hashem diber. And someday, may God swallow up death forever. May Hashem, who is the Lord, wipe the tear from upon every face. May he remove the shame of his nation from upon the earth, for Hashem has spoken. Wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom and the Pani Damali Shabta. Let us, each of us, take Hadassim to find a sense of Nechama and to hopefully be able to make a tikkun to think, how can we connect better to fellow Jews, to be able to say Achenu Kol Beit Yisrael, not just in Atuni B'Tzara, but also at times of Simcha, and to carry that message forward. Shabbat Shalom.